Good evening. I've just noticed that my clock has stopped. Oh well. I was looking up and it said 7:20, and I looked at my computer and it says 7:40, and my brain went, what? And then I noticed a little blue light, which usually means it's lost contact with the Bluetooth device that is, well, inches away from it. So hard. Anyway, I have a public service announcement for you. A little bit of an odd one from me, to be honest. I was never a fan of baked beans. And now I'm an adult, I do find myself eating things that I really didn't like before. I say I'm an adult, now I'm old, more accurately. I do find that I like things I didn't before. But one thing that I did struggle with were baked beans. Absolutely hated baked beans as a kid. Didn't like the texture, didn't like the smell, just didn't like them. And I only had to say baked bean and I already was farting, right? So, as an adult, I bought some because, fiber's good for you and all that kind of crap. And I was overwhelmingly disappointed that in the last couple of years, the sauce that came in your Heinz baked bean, for there was no other baked bean of worthy, turned to kind of red, watery wee. It used to be this thick, glorious kind of stuff that was more like a glue that kind of held your beans together, and, you could almost sculpt with them. Now it just kind of wheezes on your plate and looks really sorry. But I noticed the other day, Heinz cheesy baked beans. Now, I was a little puzzled as to how that was going to work out, because it's got a decent cheese in it. It's made with cathedral cheese. The sauce is back, people. Now, it's obviously not default baked bean sauce. It is cheesy, but it's thick. It tastes nice. Enough that I have baked beans for tea, so, or as part of my tea at least. So with that in mind, that could be amusing. But I would like to make the service announcement of Heinz cheesy beans are well worth a try. For it is a great and glorious thing. Anyway, this is where we left off yesterday. And we are now back to make some more. Now, that's a pitiful effort, so that's no good. We don't want that. I mean, really, what was I going to do with this bit of string? Alright, I need a bit more than that on my bobbin. Clearly, so we need to do the whole shenanigans again, and I hadn't necessarily planned to do this quite so soon. Okay, fine, we'll make some space over here and so, how's everyone doing today? I really haven't sorted out enough things, and I've moved things. Right, let's do some of this. Do for now. Snippety doo dah. Nasty poo. Preferably not over the thread that's already there. It's a bit better. Right. Put the half hitch on you. Join them together. So those who follow along with the sub-stories of this channel, of which there are many, after all we've already had one today, you may recall I found the waterboard a couple of weeks ago, because for some reason they'd stopped charging me. That didn't work. Screwed that up. That was my own fault. Stopped charging me for use by my meter, and decided to put on we're going to decide how much water you used tariff without any real justification. I got no notice of this. I got no indication that they'd changed this until I had noticed that my water bill was really high, but I'd also had a burst pipe, so I kind of assumed originally it was that. And I thought not much more of it. And then the next time I got a bill, it was equally really high, and I kind of went, that's a bit odd. When I said a burst pipe, I didn't really have a burst pipe. I had a man fit something, and the join gave way. That's right, another bobbin that was a bit shorter of thread than that's worth bothering with, so I'm going to wind some of that. But when kind of like yet again, instead of like 40-50 quid for a couple of months worth of water, they're charging me £275 for 3 months. I do feel somewhat put out, so I rang them up a couple of weeks ago, and I spoke to a bloke which I remember describing to you as having the persona of Marvin the paranoid android, i.e. he was chronically depressed. For I've never heard a man so despondent in my life, and I've spoken to some other depressed people in my life, and believe me, this dude put them all to shame. Anyway, been a couple of weeks now, and well, I hadn't heard anything. So I rang them up again today, and today I spoke to a lovely lady called Anna. And I managed to resist the, do you want to build a snowman, right? Thank you for that, Amy. And I spoke to Anna and I explained I'd phoned up a couple of weeks ago, spoken to some manic depressive dude who, frankly didn't seem to have any answers, could see that I had a meter but didn't understand why I'd been put on this other tariff, and that he was raising it as a complaint, and that but that I'd heard nothing. And she apologised, and she looked into it. And she went, have you got a meter? And I went, yeah. And she went, because I looked at the last bill with a meter reading on it, and I've only used like 8 units since then. And she went, can you get me a reading? And I went, of course I can. So I wandered into the kitchen. So I've dropped my bobbin, and of course it's doing the, I know you put a half hitch on me, but screw you, I'm going to unravel scenario. Sorry about that. So I gave her my reading, and I explained, I don't, because I don't go to the office anymore, and, frankly, I'm a bit of a hermit, so I don't go out that much. As a result, I'm not changing clothes every 20 minutes. I spend most of the week all but sitting in pyjamas, and so I kind of, don't get through as much water as perhaps an average family would. And well, there's only me, so it is going to be less than normal. And she looked and she said, yeah, I can see your previous bills were already low, so it's not far fetched to feel that that's that's not far off reasonable. So I'll certainly take your word for it. And she said, right, well, because the reason they hadn't, the water board, because obviously, like lots of things, one of the water board department that does the changes hadn't flipped it over yet, was because they were going to send a man to do a reading. Oh, I can read a counter under my sink, for Christ's sake. And she said, well, is it under your stairs? And I went, no, I keep telling you lot, there's nothing under my stairs except for a phone box connection. It's in the kitchen under the sink, like most are. And oh, for goodness sake, and I'll go and get you it now. And so I got her a reading. She typed it on, and she said, well, I can't guarantee you when they're going to do it, but there's certainly nothing your end now, nothing to quote hold it up. So you should get a thing, and they should backdate and refund you any what is clearly going to be an overpayment. And I said, well, so why didn't he do that 2 weeks ago? No offence, but if you can do that and you've been really helpful and nice, why couldn't he have done that? And she goes, I don't know. she didn't seem overly impressed with him either. Because it was kind of like, you know, he sounded so miserable that I didn't know whether I needed to come and slap him awake or you know, call social services for him. And she said, well, you know, I can see the name of the gentleman who did it, and you know, I can tell you he doesn't work at this particular office and he's not in our company, because like so many things these days, when you phone British Gas or whatever, 9 times out of 10 you actually aren't phoning British Gas, you're phoning a call centre who answer on their behalf, kind of thing, right? And she said, and I said, so it means you can't go and slap him for me, and she went, sadly not. But I see your point. I will, you know, give the feedback to people. And I said, so when it changes over, will I get told? And she went, well, I can put a note on your thing to confirm to you that, you know, it's all gone through. And I went, I'd appreciate that. And she was absolutely lovely. She really, really was. Such a stark difference to manic depressive last time. So just goes to prove sometimes you have to be persevering. But it just seems really, really weird that they could all have sorted it a couple of weeks ago and it could all be done and dusted by now, but literally nothing had happened since my last phone call. Which is kind of wrong, really. So yes, I find myself somewhat aggrieved by it all, and I don't feel I'm being over, you know, Karenish about it all, on the simple grounds that, you know, I possibly paid them £600 odd more than I needed to, and they're kind of like, oh well, never mind, you know. Actually, I do mind. I know it might seem a bit of a surprise, but, you know, I do actually mind. Because I don't know about many of you, but it's not the kind of money I have floating around. You know, I could be better using it for other things. Let's do release you two now. And put you in that hole and you in that hole for next time. And off we go. So I don't know, it's just, but that made quite a nice end to my day, actually, you know, speaking to someone who clearly, you know, was going to do something. I mean, maybe she just gave it all the talk and, you know, was not going to do anything. But I got the, you know, distinct impression that she was, you know, awake and with it, and, you know, this, you know, she took my meter reading, and you'd like to think that she put it in the system, and, you know, all of those kind of things. So from that point of view, you know, it sounds positive at least. Whereas the other bloke was, oh, I'll have to raise a complaint. Okay, well, how long will that take? Don't know. What will happen, you know, when you know, when it gets sorted? You know, what will happen about the refund? Don't know. Have to, you know, have to raise a complaint for that. It's not a complaint to ask how long does it take to get a refund. You know, it should not be a complaint to answer a basic question. Now, admittedly, when you don't work for the company, you can't promise, because, you know, some of these things are out of your control. But the simple answer is it usually takes days, weeks, months, whatever, right? I'm so glad I got someone different this time. That's right, sticking on the knot slightly, which isn't helping. All right. Now, something's going on here that shouldn't be. There we go. So, because I've been using those other bobbins with their sin bands on, I'd forgotten how many times with these bobbins I seem to spend my time making them shorter. Which, of course, is why we put the sin bands on the other one, let's truly be honest, because they were kind of doing the same, but I started off with the sin bands, so they didn't, you know, because we know that they are prone to doing that. These, I don't remember them being quite this annoying. But I guess it's like everything. When you manage to make a couple of things, so we spent a couple of weeks not using these bobbins, and using bobbins with sin bands on so that it didn't happen, you do suddenly become really noticeable that, for want of a better word, more observant in the fact that you're having to constantly shorten bobbins going, yeah, I haven't been doing this for 2 weeks, and you know what? I haven't exactly missed it. Because they just seem to get longer and longer almost every time you use them. And never mind. I've been dreaming of well, almost literally, how to, making strips and joining them together. And do I want to do maybe a harsh edge, a bit like these straight edges, and make just 6 strips and make a bigger spectacle of the join so that it looks, I don't know, for want of a better word, a design feature than a requirement, if you know what I mean. That you distinctly planned, you wanted it, rather than it was kind of thrust upon you by your own mental limitations of dealing with 50,000 bobbins. So, if I borrow these sticks that I've got here, if you end up with a curtain that kind of, a bit like these sticks, is in panels, is that really so bad? There would be a lot less joins. It would, your eyes would travel the length of the window. It would be all of those kind of things. So, from that point of view, it wouldn't be bad. But is it what you want? And why do these always end up looking wrong? Because they untwist slightly, and then the bobbins roll around a little, and then they don't hold the right shape that you had 2 seconds ago. So these are all twisted. Now you see, some of these probably should be twisted, so you should be twisted, and you should be twisted, and then we should do cross, twist, cross, twist. There we go. Now stay that way. Got the itches again. My back constantly itches. There are times that I feel like I need to do the dog thing and lie on the carpet and have a good squirm. I don't know whether I get dog hairs down the back of my t-shirt, which is almost, to be honest, it's almost certainly dog hairs in the back of my t-shirt stroke jumper, because the dogs like to lie behind me. So all it takes is some of their more sturdier guard hairs to stick in my jumper and be poking me and make it itch. And of course, being back there, I can't bloody see it. So, but it always feels like, it feels like I almost should have a rash, but don't. I'm not aware I have a rash anyway. But it's that kind of feeling. It feels, everything just itches and... Pin around here somewhere. There it is. Oh, what was the name of the game? No Rest for the Wicked did a big patch today, and the internet seems quite inspired by it. I really sucked at playing that game. I am not a great games player. There are some games I really love playing, and it doesn't matter how crap I am, I still enjoy playing them. And then there are games that if you're a little bit crap, that's it. You almost can't enjoy it. Me and my ex-husband found this with Toca Touring Car, for example, is that if you cannot come in the top 3 places for the first, I think it's 2 races of the game, that's it. It doesn't let you play the rest. Well, someone has to be last. Out of like 20 people, only 3 people can be in the top 3, and it's not always up to you, if you've been rammed by some other idiot, whether that's you or not. So it did seem a little biased, shall we call it. And it used to annoy us because we clearly have slightly different driving styles. And he could do some well at some bits, I'd do well at other bits. We found this a lot with Grand Theft Auto and other games like it, in that it's not that we are distinctly bad. It's just that we clearly play / drive differently. And there was one game, I can't remember what it was, but you started off with like some beaten up old Ford Escort kind of thing. And you had to get certain licenses and then win certain races, and obviously it kind of gave you prize money. And then when you had prize money, you could buy a better car. But it took quite a bit before you could actually buy a better car, no matter what you were doing. Even though, the later races paid out bigger money, the cars cost bigger money, so you still had to win, 6 or 7 races before you could even dream to even upgrade your car, let alone buy a better car. And there were rally bits. He couldn't do the rally bits for love nor money. I found them really, really simple. And for the licensing things that you had to do along the way, there were some that I sailed through, and there were some that just I was nowhere near. I mean, I might as well have walked, right? And then there were some of those were some that he could do without really trying. And so in the end, we kind of took turns, because we learned very early on in our relationship not to play these games against each other. For that only results in arguments and swearing. So we didn't do that. But we did kind of, well, I can't do this bit, can you do this bit? And I'll advance your character here, you can advance my character there. And yeah. But it just seemed really sad that, you pay like 40 something quid for a game, and then you can only play like 5 minutes worth of it because you're too crap. And it's just not going to let you, at least, because maybe those are the only 2 circuits you're crap at. Yeah, but if they're the first 2, that's it, you're done. And, if you unlock them with cheat codes, as we found, sometimes that is the case. It's not that you are bad and, inherently bad at the game. You just suck at those particular circuits. And we did some snowboarding thing, and that was kind of the same deal, in that he was better at some things, I was better at others, and you come go, wow, you've had a good day, you've moved us on like 6 things. Yeah, I did, but I can't do the next one. And then, I'd go and make lunch, tea, come back and go, oh, you managed to clear it then? Oh yeah, I found that one easy. Okay, great. But in a way, games are not supposed to be played like that. And I found the No Rest for the Wicked kind of along those lines, in that I know what I wanted to do, but it kind of has a small number of trashy type mobs, and then you go somewhere and there's a bigger guy, right? I won't call him a boss mob, but, verging on a boss mob. And you're doing all right with the little guys. You're doing all right with the little guys. You're doing all right with the little guys. You come along this slightly bigger guy, and he kind of come along and goes, and that's it. You're dead, and you're like, I didn't even see him. You know, half the time he one-shots you, and you're like, how am I supposed to... You know, you've just woken up as a character. You're brand new. You've basically woken up in your socks, and you haven't even got a pair of undies on. And you've got, like, you know, one wet bit of seaweed, and he comes along, breathes on you, and you're dead, and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do about that? And I find those games utterly infuriating. And funnily enough, I struggle with that in Path of Exile too. At the end of Act 1, there is a big boss mob. Now, there are some bossier mobs along the way. I usually do alright with those. But the boss mob at the end of Act 1 gets me every time. And it's why I can't play hardcore, because I can't do the boss mob. You know, I almost get through on a fluke every single time. And it doesn't matter how many levels I game, you know, because I get there relatively easily. Okay? And he comes along and he kind of goes, flick, you're dead. Okay. Well, you know, I beef up my armour and I get a couple more levels and a few more skill points, and I go back and he goes, you're dead. And I'm like, I've not had the gear opportunities or I've not got the funds to buy anything. I just can't. You know, I am literally almost standing there in a pair of wet socks only with a limp bit of seaweed. And this guy just, like, flicks me once and I'm dead. Okay, I think it's 3 times and I'm dead. But it's not a lot, right? And it makes it so infuriating that I've got to the point that I've got a character for the new PoE patch that came out a while ago. Must be about a month ago now. No, it was certainly a couple of weeks anyway. And, you know, they brought out a new class and released a load of new weapons and they changed loads of stuff. And so, you know, kind of new character, right, off I go. Gets this, you know, boss mob. And I've been stuck on it for 5 days now. Is it because I'm crap? Probably. But at the same time, I'm clearing everything else alright. And this is what I mean. Look at how these gone. This seems to have like 22 twists to it, which is not right. They've grown like 6 inches and fallen off the bottom of the screen and off the bottom of the pillow. And so I've now got to redo this bit because I'm going to have to completely undo it to work out who was supposed to be where. So you're there, cross, twist. Let's leave you there. Right. Now stay there and stop being annoying. I need you. Alexa, what's the temperature in here?
The average temperature of the home is 21.5 degrees.
Really? I'm also getting fed up with Facebook. I read a post like 3 or 4 hours ago and it's just notified me that they replied. Yeah, I know, I replied to it 3 hours ago. Am I dreaming? Is it a bank holiday this weekend? Bloody is too. Awesome. Didn't realise that. Excellent. 3-day weekend. Just what I needed.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
And the Alexa device in the hallway just woke up for a laugh. Right. Didn't realise it was bank holiday weekend again already. Excellent. Sweet. Right, this one's gone all baggy, so I'm gonna gone all flappy and crappy, so I'm going to unwind quite a lot of this and rewind quite a lot of it to try and snug it down. There we go. It's really gone a bit sloppy. There we go. Let's put it in the winder then. It's going to be like that. Now I've got a big knot at the end. And I'll scratch up it off. Right. There we go. Kisses. Pair number 1. Go away. Pair number 2. Really? That is doing. So, spam bot, report spam bot, spam, for spam. Tell us why. Spam. Yes, I verify a me. Block it, ban it, deny it. Right, there we go. So, to make it a bit short. Actually, I meant to put you in there, and now you go in there like that. Oh, Spambot is dead. He has been evicted from Twitch. Alexa, what's the temperature on the downstairs thermostat?
The downstairs thermostat temperature is 21 degrees.
Well, like horseshit it is. Don't believe you. See what I mean? Look, this one's gone off the bottom of the screen again. Yet a minute ago, it was so not that long. I just don't know how they do it. Sometimes I catch them. Sometimes I catch them letting go. And I can see why they've done it. But most of the time, they just suddenly appear to be really, really long. You know? Little birdies tweeting outside. Guess it is warmer. Alexa, what's the weather like?
Right now in Cheltenham, it's 21 degrees Celsius with clear skies and sun. Tonight's forecast is clear skies, with a low of 8 degrees. By the way, I can help keep track of your Amazon orders. Just ask, where's my stuff?
Yeah, look, I'm going to do that. Definitely feels more than 21 degrees in it. So yeah, how did I not notice it's a bank holiday this weekend? For those who are not overly aware what the UK bank holidays are, is they are our national holidays. Well, mostly national. They are our 3 days off in the year that you know. Of course, we just had Easter. So we had, and I had the week off after Easter, so I only went back, a couple of days ago, and already it's another 3-day weekend. I'm liking this. Oh, stop it, Amy. Miserable dog. Itch, itch. Let's put you two back together. It feels like the heating's on, but I can see that it's not. Thank you, Rory, Rory. It's making me feel itchy because I'm hot. Or I'm not cold, that's more accurate, which is unusual. Okay, jump her off then. And then I'll get cold really quickly, because that's how that works. I'll give my back a bit of a scratch there. And everything else that needs a bit of a scratch. Right. And I need another pair of bobbins, so here we go. Oops, nearly dropped those. You know, I think that I've worked out why this feels so much slower. And I know this is going to sound really petty, but it gives the illusion of slower. When we did the strip, you may recall, because we did a straight strip and you hang 2 pairs on everything, but out of every pair of bobbins, you hang 2, work 1. Now, when you work the one of the next pair, you work through both of those. So you do work through them all, but you hang 2, work 1, hang 2, work 1. Because while I was doing the same mesh as here, because you hang them in pairs, so you do 1, then you do this one, you hang 2 and work through those, then you do this one and hang 2 and work through 5, 7, 9 as you go. It makes it because you only do 1 row of working for 2 pairs of bobbins. It feels faster. Whereas with these, I mean, I'm adding 2 here, but obviously I'm having to do a lot more stitches per, dance, shall we call it? Because obviously rose ground is 4 pins, and that's 4 times as much work. Then you've got the pre and the post kind of dances either side, so there's another 4 things, so you've got 8 stitches in total, because you've got the pre and post pins, and then you've got the pre-dance and the post-dance kind of thing, right? But of course, when I was adding them for the strip, they all went in and did just the pre and post pin all the way down to the bottom, rinse and repeat. So the adding and making a mesh inevitably goes a lot faster. And I think because you see everything all kind of building up quite quickly, and It's also on a roll, so you're only looking at a smaller area, and you know, come the end of the day, you look and you can see you've done a reasonable sized chunk. I mean, it's not that you can't see you've done a reasonable sized chunk on a square, but I think that is a lot of it, certainly at the beginning when you're adding bobbins, because obviously I'm sitting here fiddling with bobbins at the moment, which I did for the other one, you may recall. I hadn't really planned it out, and we pricked it, and I wound bobbins and added some, and wound bobbins and added some, and you know, so we did all of that. So a lot of what I'm doing right now is no different. But we did add 2, work 1. Add 2, work 1. And I really do think that mentally makes a lot of difference, because, you know, like I said at the time, it feels like you're only working half the bobbins that you put in. Now, of course, you're not, because, as I said, you put in 1, and then, so like I put 2 in here, if I was going to do the mesh, I'd take this one down through all the previous bobbins. Well, when I come to add the next 2, I do go through both of these to get through it. But by then, you've moved on and you've added 2 more pairs of bobbins. So it does kind of happen pretty quickly, that you feel like you're making good progress. Whereas with here, because you add 1 at a time, for the most part, I mean, while I'm adding 2 now, I am effectively doing 2 rows at a time in this section, in terms of grid capacity. But you've got the cloth stitch, which goes backwards and forwards a lot. Now, that's quite a quick bit, but it's backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And, you know, I won't say it's slow, because it's not. If it was put in a pin, wind it round a pin, so you just kind of twisted it a bit and put it at the other side, it would be a lot quicker. And you may recall I had an alternative cloth stitch thing where it was cloth stitch but not cloth stitch. So instead of having one pair that goes backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, all the ones that go down, all the ones that kind of, well, I say down at an angle, but you know, all the ones that go this way, so you'd put 3 at the ends and 3 would run the length, and then the ones that were going this way would just kind of end up straight through. So it makes a much more open, lacy, delicate look to it, whereas obviously the cloth stitch bit here is quite solid, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, it's what I wanted. But if I'd done that, it would happen so much faster, because, well, it would. And you know, all of these stupid little things kind of all add up, as we all know. Actually, you need to be longer, and you need to be shorter to get the knots kind of up in the edge. So cross, twist, cross, twist. So yeah, I do think that is part of it. Plus, spiders also occupy a fair bit of space, and you know, while you do a bunch of twists, a little bit of kind of clothy type stuffish in the middle, and all of that, it's only 1 pin. So again, there's a lot, you know, a bit of shenanigans where they all kind of mix them out, do a little dance in the middle, but it's only 1 pin. And so, as we already have established, that, you know, it's definitely the pinning of the lace that, you know, makes it a bit slower, because I've got to go and get the pin and fight it out of the box and make sure it's only one of them and the right way up, and then I've got to manage to find the hole for it, and, you know, tension everything afterwards. Whereas if you don't have any of that going on, well, it's a lot quicker. And so, again, spiders mean that it grows quite quickly. Now, there is, I know, because I've mentioned it before, a scarf type thing that has been doing the rounds on the internet, Oops, I know what I need to do. I need to take you out before I get too carried away. So I can tuck you back in. There we go. Which is made purely of spiders. Now, as you know, not the biggest fan of spiders. Both physical spiders and lace spiders. But, at the same time, it would grow really freaking quickly. You know, I don't know, it just... This is where my brain hurts, because my brain wants to do so many different things, but they all take too much time to be experimenting with. I almost need like a research team behind me, so I can go, right, well, I need you to spend a week doing a chunk of this, and you to do a chunk of that, and you to do a chunk of that, and you to do a chunk of that, and then we'll all look at it, and we'll work out which ones of those we're going to use, and then we'll do a chunk of this and a chunk of that, and we'll see, you know, does that, you know, like the joins, so we'll make a bunch of strips then, and we'll, you know, each one of you will make a strip, and then we can, you know, or two, and you can join them at the end of, you know, in a couple of weeks' time, you'll have joined all your strips together, and we can do some comparisons, you know. And there is this bit of me that kind of goes, I kind of need a posse of lace makers behind me that share this vision, and that we'll all gain out the end of it. Because we probably would. But we'll all make chunks and, you know, get on with it. And then, because, you know, a whole bunch of us would be doing the same for the same goal, we could all kind of get together and at the end of the week go, right, well, I've completed my task and this is how it went, and you've completed your task. I prefer yours over mine, right, we'll ditch mine then. And then, I like this bit in mine, but not that bit in yours, so we'll ditch, you know, we'll you know, right, I'll take the task of going and redoing it and mixing those two together, you know, all of those kind of aspects. And I guess that's what happened in yesteryear. You know, women sat around making lace because they had to, but they probably had some element of, I wouldn't say of control of what they did, but, you know, they'll have had children who wanted in on the act, and so they could have used them to, you know, well, you do this and we'll see how it looks at the end. Oh, I actually do like that. Yeah, we'll keep that. And, you know, I just can't possibly, to be honest, I can't imagine doing this as a job. What have you done? It's, you know, I can't imagine having to do 80, 90 hours of this a week just to have food on the table. It just seems, you know, a bit much. But people did. Stop getting longer. I'm not in the mood. I'm in the mood to make lace, not wind thread back on bobbins because you've decided to unwind. Goodness, dogs, just sit still, can ya? Could be my neighbours putting bins out, forgetting that actually the bins are a day out this week. What day is it today? Is it Thursday today or is it Wednesday? Wednesday, yeah. Bin day's tomorrow, ladies. Lady. Or gent, I'm guessing lady if I can hear it. Shut up! I know! She put the bin out! God help her! This rat will put the bin out with you in it. So I caught you. I just watched you cheat. Bad bobbin. Smack the bobbin. Maybe the bin men do come tomorrow. I'm sure it said Friday though. Hang on. I'm sure it said Friday. No. It is tomorrow. My bad. Take it back. Sorry, missus. It's her birthday soon. Gotta work out what to get her for her birthday, actually. And before you ask, I would make her something lace, but she's much like me. She's a bit too tomboy for that. While I've got friends who would appreciate something lacy, and it's not that she wouldn't appreciate it. If I made her something, you know, like a bookmark, she'd probably put it in a picture frame or something. Well, she might even use it. But she is tomboyish. She is not a frills and stuff kind of girl. So I love her to pieces. She's great. Let's put you in a stick to control you a little bit. This one that way we can put you out the way. You're not full yet, I know this, but you can get further out the way. Two. I'm impressed I don't rip skin out with that thing. It is a great back scratcher, but being metal, I am surprised that it doesn't kind of do more damage than good, but it done half scratch nice. It's a bit like when you scratch with it with your nails and not just kind of give it a rub. It kind of gets in there. It's really quite nice. And it was quite cheap off Amazon as well. Time to tie a knot. Stop being annoying. Hang on, I've got an annoying bit of thread. Needs calming down. There we go. Beeswax is very good for that. Slightly stiffens it, but also straightens it out, which is stops it gallivanting around as I'm trying to tie a knot in it. Which is what we want after all. So, next pair goes there. I just wish it was a slightly bit softer. Just a wee tiny bit. Because it is a little bit dry and flaky. It's right at the end. It's when the ends are like this, you can't really see, but the ends are all curly. It makes my life difficult. So the beeswax does, you see I've wiped it through twice now and it's much straighter. So they're really good for that. But it's also slightly crumbly and dry, and it's kind of wish it just was literally a hair softer so that it wasn't quite crumbly. And that way I'd only have to do one pass as well. I screwed that up, sorry. Well, I know how I screwed it up, I just kind of... Well, I know what's wrong with it, and so I know how I screwed it up, I just don't see how I screwed it up, if you know what I mean. Obviously didn't put it through the right bit of hole, you know. Okay. So to anyone lurking, how you doing? Don't need a pin there, you idiot. Did I do an extra bit? I don't think I did an extra bit. Confused now. This is because I put things in all the wrong places. That's because... What the flying buggery is going on here then? How have I managed this? So let's undo you a second. And undo you a second. Because you are supposed to actually be up there. That's why it looks funny. Which now means you, while I could have just moved the pin, I needed to make sure I hadn't screwed anything else up. So, see, this one just undid a load for no good reason. Give me a pin. See, that doesn't look right at all. It's like I missed a bit. Like that. Let me put something on in the background. If you guys aren't going to be talking, that's okay. Don't mind. I could do with chatter. Let me see. That'll do.
Apocalypse Bailey said, I'm here and listening, but it's too hot to move.
It's not just me then that's hot. Okay, that's how I feel better. How you doing, Bailey? I've always meant to ask you, what do you do for a living? If you don't mind sharing, obviously. Okay. I always wondered. I know it's going to sound really weird, but I almost had the impression you were a lawyer. I don't know where it came from, but my brain kind of put you in that category, so there you are. Hence, I always wondered what you did. Because once, you know, as the phrase goes, it seemed to come to me in a dream, you know. Maybe I dreamt the fact that you were one. But maybe you were, maybe you weren't. So I thought I'd ask you. That's okay. Just to, you know, share fairly, I build servers and do IT support, so you know, my job is just so exciting. Well, actually it's not. It's not that bad. The problem is I guess like a lot of things, is that it becomes rather repetitive. And while it's not hard work, the moment it becomes repetitive, your brain kind of wants to go on a holiday and do something else. And it's not that you're not busy, because, well, you can be really busy, but you're busy doing the same things. I mean, not that I've had to recently, but if I had to build 500 servers, well, you know, maybe the first few are interesting because you haven't done it. Yeah, by the end, not so much. And most of our work does tend to be repetition of the same kinds of things. There are only a handful of things that we seem to actually end up doing. And it does have a considerable repetition to it, which can make it rather non-brain intensive. It's not that it's hard, because it's technically not, because you've already done the hard work of building the template so that it's easy in the, you know, when you come to do it. So if I promise you could build one of my servers because I have made it so that it's that easy, you'll understand my problem. Is that in dumbing it down, I've dumbed it down so it's boring now. But it also means I can't get it wrong, so, you know. Hey, Fruit Bee. I was missing you. I miss you all when you're not here, so glad to see you here. Thank you for coming. That's okay. It's not, you know, much as I appreciate all of you coming, you know, you are not, it's not like I pay you to be here, or, you know, you're financially obligated. We're not family. You know, you are allowed to do other things. You know, it's you don't have to have a hall pass not to be here. You know. I think it's the elections round here tomorrow, actually. I have to go and check my voting card. Got a feeling it's tomorrow. In which case I've been sleeping through that too. I've only just realised it's bank holiday tomorrow, so, you know. My dog is sighing like she's got the weight of the world on her shoulders. Cheer up, dog.
Lucinda said, "Oh yes,
She's sitting there going,
Lucinda said, the cat had a doubt."
some pets, I mean, they are better than half the actors on our screens, right? They know how to hit you, when to hit you, what to do, what they can get away with. The one that always gets me, especially with dogs, is you take your dog on a walk. If I take my dog down the field, bugger plays up like nothing else. Doesn't come when you call it, you know, because it knows full well I'm not. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'll be annoyed. Well, that's a me problem, right? And so that you go down the field, they act up. Someone else walks your dogs down the field. Oh, they do as they're told because they don't know what they can get away with. So they make you look really stupid because, you know, you go down there and every time you walk your dog, you're cussing out like a navvy because the dogs aren't doing, you know, what they should be doing and they're not coming, they're rolling in things, you know, generally being a pain in the butt. And then someone else comes and calls them back and they're like, oh yes, I'm a perfect little puppy, I know exactly what to do. Well, you don't do it for freaking me, do you? I guess it's a bit like parents and you know, children going to school. Children at school tend to act very differently to children at home. Either because they know that the teacher can't touch them and their parents will, or the other way round, you know. Why am I stealing that pin? I don't know why I think that pin's sacred, mind. Put that pin in there. So let's put these in sticks. In case you wondered what that was, it's a hair thing. Now, how on earth have I got to this? Where there's like something weird going on. It's going to take me a bit to sort this out. This is going to prove to be really hard to solve. There we go, that's enough. Finally got to the bottom. Right, untwist you. Bear with me while I rewind, about 1.5 meters of this stuff back on a bobbin the hard way. Because I've got to keep tension on it, which makes it difficult. cannot believe it's taken me 2 hours to do that. How in the world is that 2 hours? See, this is the difference between the strip and this. Because adding the bobbins here feels so much slower, that tiny little square took me 2 stinking hours. It just doesn't feel possible. I mean, it is, because clearly, you know, you've watched me. I don't feel I was being particularly slow. It just seems... That feels like it's in the wrong place, but there we go. There seems to be 2 there.
Apocalypse Bailey said, I still think you'll get it finished.
Dude, I could probably have the Immaculate Conception before GTA 6. Wow, there you go. Now you have an answer. How do you feel about having your answer? See, that's how I felt about mine. It's some people are after labels. Some of us are after being able to understand how we're different and maybe being able to explain to other people who are struggling with interactions with us why we're different and that it's not just we're being an asshole, right? You know, that it is something that we are built slightly differently to them and that, you know, we can't change it. We're not doing it deliberately. And for me, it was the like a bit like you say, finally understanding why I'm different and in what ways I am different to the average dude. Because, of course, we're all different. And, you know, for example, as we all know, autism is a spectrum. Now, a wise lady once said to me, a spectrum goes from none to everything. So everyone could argue they're on the spectrum, but we're talking people who register on the spectrum. And to have... to be honest, it does... I think this is one of the weird things that I struggle with, is that because... Well, you know where your differences lie. You know you can predict things that are going to be hard for you. And one of the things that I think I struggle with is, while I was diagnosed as Asperger's, because that's what it was told at the time, they don't call it that anymore. So technically my category almost is slightly unknown now, because I haven't been retested, because, you know, they're backed up enough. Not here. Not here they don't. They don't call it Asperger's anymore in the UK. And I kind of feel a bit annoyed by that, because what everyone had universally become to understand as Asperger's was kind of, you know, 90% of how I am, right? So, like, for example, on Monday, when I was trying to explain the joints and all the rest of it, or was it Tuesday, whenever the hell it was. It's Wednesday today, so it was Monday. Part of the reason I couldn't cope with it is because my Asperger's autism bit kicked in enough that I was already pushing beyond the boundaries of what I'm good at and very far out of my comfort zone. And, you know, the slightest hair of nothing was too much, right? And, you know, I don't pretend that it was one of my finest moments. I really don't. But it is one of those things, is that it can help people like you and me having a diagnosis recognise maybe why people reacted in a way that they did, that they would find how we react to certain things awkward, or, you know, I don't tend to have particularly too many true autistic style meltdowns. The problem is, when I do, I'm in the middle of it and I can't explain it. Afterwards, when technically it's history, I can tell you all about it. But right at the time, I can't explain nothing. Other than I've melted, I can't cope with anything, and that it's kind of all too much. And I demonstrate that in a usually fairly vocal, upset or angry kind of manner. And, you know, I've phoned my co-worker who tends to send me lots of text messages. I've had to phone him up once or twice in floods of tears because I really didn't know what to do with myself and I couldn't think of anyone else. Now, it's not that I don't have friends, but I won't say they were involved in the situation, because they weren't, but they were the closest to the situation at hand, and so were most likely to be able to offer proper advice. But of course I couldn't really explain it to them, but they were aware of all the things that were going on at work, therefore could explain maybe other points of view and help me come up with a strategy. But it you know, so even at the age of fucking 52, there are still times when I don't know what to do with it. And it's a bit like PMS. You know, sometimes when you're having it, the fact that, you know, I know, this little bit of thread that you can't really see that's just off screen, this one here, look, I'll bring it on screen, look. This little bit of thread is in the way, can break you in PMS, just because it exists. There's no real logic, it just happens. And sometimes you cope with things, and you know, something happens and you're really practical, you deal with it, you're happy, you don't see a problem. Other times, the tiniest little thing is one thing too much, and you weren't necessarily aware that you were that close to your limit, and you break. And with all of these aspects going on, to be honest, with, you know, having seen lots of things, as you do, on the internet about ADHD, I would say I'm close to that. I was mid-30s. I'd managed to get to 30-something in my life before they diagnosed me. But again, one of the other problems is they didn't really call it autism when I was younger. Hell, they didn't even diagnose I was dyslexic throughout my entire time at school, even though I was putting capital letters in words and misspelling them 20 different ways on the same sheet of paper. I mean, looking back, kind of obvious. And I think this is kind of the problem, is that the more they know, the more accurate they can be with a diagnosis. And as more links and information is worked out, what they knew 40 years ago, they didn't know today. Well, if they'd known today's stuff back then, maybe I would have been the one having help at school, and maybe I'd have managed to, you know, have far better school results. Maybe my life would have been really different. But they didn't know it then, so I didn't have that, so I am where I am. And it doesn't actually bother me that they didn't know. I mean, as I say, looking back on some of it, it's blindingly obvious. You know, only an idiot would not... I mean, as a child you have no idea, but as an adult, only an idiot would not notice I'm dyslexic. But that often goes with autism and other things. And so, I don't, you know, so while I got diagnosed as dyslexic in my 20s, it was kind of, oh, we found something wrong with you, there you go, that explains a lot. It meant that you were bored at school and not, you know, because you couldn't follow. Well, of course I could follow. I just couldn't write it down. And not being able to articulate on paper was seen as a horrendous problem. I mean, I was told I was stupid on many occasions, but at the same time I was being told I was stupid, I managed to join Mensa, so I'm clearly not stupid, I'm just not intelligent in the way that they thought. And, you know, there's been quite a few shows now, if you think of things like The Good Doctor, where, you know, he is autistic. Now, he is far more autistic than I am. Or I'm a lot less autistic than he is, whichever way you like to think about it. But it goes to, you know, it is that kind of proof that just because you're different doesn't make you stupid. Now, I said yesterday that, you know, it was a phrase that Einstein used, which is that if you judge a fish by his ability to climb trees, he will always think he's stupid. And it is very true. Just because I can't write things down doesn't make me stupid. Because I'm not. I just can't write it down. And that's, you know, it's a bit like I can't run a triathlon, but that doesn't make me stupid either. I can do plenty of other things, probably plenty of other things that many people can't. I pick up new crafting things like I've been doing them all my life. Well, that's clearly not stupidity, right? I do think that there is a habit for parents to diagnose their children, to excuse behaviours, and to not teach them that those behaviours don't fit in the norms of society. Now, we all know that, to a large extent, some of these behaviours are not put on. Exactly, right? And it's, you know, when you have teachers, you know, telling you you're shit, You didn't try. When you maybe tried as hard as your little heart was able, all it does is tear you down inside. And, you know, I've talked about this a bit on stream before, is that my parents were never proud of me. Not once. When, you know, they weren't proud of me when I went from, you know, not having done gymnastics to being the best gymnast in the school in a year. They were not happy with me when I got grade 8 in music. And it's soul destroying. Listen, I so understand that you could literally have put blood, sweat and tears into it, stayed up all night for weeks on end, and some asshole turns around and said, you didn't try. Honey, you were not with me when I did this. You can't tell me. You can tell me I put all my effort in and it wasn't effective, but you can't tell me I didn't try. You can tell me you thought I would do better than this. You can tell me that my efforts weren't fruitful. But you can't tell how much effort I put in unless you're in my head, right? Exactly. I mean, there are lots of analogies for it. I usually use if I've got a teaspoon and you ask me to move a ton of mud, it's going to take me a really long time. But it's not that I'm not doing effort. I'm just not using the best tool, and I'm not necessarily aware of a better tool. Maybe I don't realise that round the other side of the shed is a JCB, right? And it should have taken me 20 minutes. There are always things that someone does better than someone else, someone doesn't do better than else. And it's not because they're a lesser person. And too many times at school they make out it's because you're a lesser person, because you didn't. And it does hurt, and it hurts. Well, I know as an adult, I am partly screwed up by the fact that no one was proud of me. For the whole time I tried to make people proud of me, not one. Even when I, age 40, I got my black belt. My dad wasn't proud of me. He wouldn't come see me do it. He wouldn't travel the hour up the road. He wasn't proud of me when I did it. And I was so hurt by that, because even as an adult, he couldn't bring himself to be proud of something I worked really, really hard to achieve. It was, so, but for me, I never told my dad that I got diagnosed as having autism. In any shape or form. I didn't tell him I was dyslexic, even though it should have been blindingly obvious. Because he was already disappointed in me enough, I didn't want to think it was almost I didn't want him to believe he had brought up, a defective child. Now I am, but it's not his fault. So what good would it have done him? Because he was already disappointed. I didn't need to give him more disappointments, because that is, because, maybe there is a chance, I know it wouldn't have worked, but there is a chance, maybe he would have gone, oh, that explains a lot, I'm really sorry I was hard on you. That would never have come out of his mouth. Never. He would have just said, well, you would have had to have tried harder then to make up for it. That was his attitude. Oh, well, if you're not capable of that, you'll just have to try harder then. And like you've said, but I was already trying my best. I had no more to give. So I suffered for that. And, it's part of the reason I think I'm a bit of a loner, is that no one was ever, I won't say pleased to see me, but no one was ever proud of me. No one was ever excited when I achieved something. So why do it? Why share it with people? Why bring yourself more heartache that way? And as you say, having a diagnosis and being able to say to people, I have this. This means that in these situations, I will not handle it in the way maybe you will. As a result, please take this into account if I do weirdy shit, and please accept that I won't be pleased I've done weirdy shit, because, I'm, compos mentis, I am aware of my actions, but not necessarily at the time I do them. And so, I've had times where, despite having plenty of intelligence, I can look at something and my brain just goes, no. No, I don't accept that. 1 and 1 is 2. No, not accepting that. But how can it not? Well, I don't know, but I don't get it. And it can stay like that. And I can't explain to people. You can teach. It's not the way you're explaining it. My brain just says no and turns off. I can't change it. And I certainly have a number of the ADHD characteristics. You listen to me, how I can't make decisions of what I want to do, what I want it to look like. And it's not because I'm overwhelmed with the choices. It's because all of the choices are good. and any of them would technically do. But I want to find the perfect one. But at the same time, I don't want to spend 3 years making test bits to find out which one's actually perfect. And my little brain kind of ties itself in knots and cries a lot because, well, it can't make the decision because, well, there's too many options. But I'm not overwhelmed by the options. I just can't pick because they're all good. I'm pleased for you that you have an answer. And I'm also pleased that your answer to how you felt about your diagnosis was that you've now got an explanation. Because too many people, as I say, get their kids diagnosed as every letter combination under the sun, because it means they don't have to say, now, Johnny, stop doing that. Oh, well, he's this. Yeah, but he still needs to learn that you don't scream in church, that you don't rip shit off the supermarket shelves and throw it. That no matter how much you want to, he's still got to learn that is not acceptable. It means you have to go about teaching him differently. It means that it's going to take you a heck of a lot longer. But what isn't acceptable is watching you just go, oh, well, never mind, because he's got insert something, right? Now, I do appreciate that ADHD, you can't concentrate for long on things, but at the same time, I've seen so many children who've been diagnosed with ADHD. Oh, well, he's got ADHD, he can't do that because it'll he can't concentrate that long. The little shit can play, Fortnite for 6 hours. Oh, but he can't concentrate to sit still for 5 minutes in a waiting room. Well, then, if he can do Fortnite for 6 hours, he's not got ADHD. He may have tendencies in that direction, in that he is easily distracted, but if he can play 6 hours of Fortnite and forget to pee and eat, he's not got enough of an ADHD. He can concentrate when he wants to. Oh, they do. But then that's what you have to bring into life. But that's what you have to put into your life to find that in other tasks. And that is the trick for... And that's what they need to teach him, little Johnny who's been a shit in, that's what they need to teach him, and not go, oh, well, he's got this, so he can, we can't prevent it. Well, actually, you can. If the earlier you explain this to him, the earlier he understands it, the more he understands himself. Small children are not necessarily stupid. They don't have life experience of their own, but that's what the adults are for. If the adult sits there and goes, right, I appreciate that you can't just sit here and do nothing. So why don't you count the number of zigzags in the carpet? Why don't you count the number of pins on the board? Why don't you work out how many combinations of shapes you can fit in the ceiling tiles? What do you think I did when I was in hospital for, with nothing to do? No, hello, make your own games up. Try and play music in your head. Do mathematical equations in your head. Use your fingers maybe to help a bit. all these things to distract you, but that don't disturb other people. And if you teach them that, little kids, especially, aren't kind of snobby like we can be as adults. Because if someone said to you, oh, well, if you're in the waiting room and you're really struggling to sit still, count the pins on the board or the stripes on the carpet, there's kind of, I'm not two. Well, in this kind of situation, mentally, maybe we are. And we, count the dots in my pattern. It is, play on your phone but with the sound off. Find something to do. Don't drag everyone else into your personal nightmare, right? And as a child, children can do that. And I've said, I helped in schools when I was a kid, and there were kids who were really disruptive. But I had a habit of being able to get them to do things because I would give them a challenge to make it. What's the problem? Oh, it's really fucking boring. Well then, if you're finding this boring, why don't you look at this, see if this is boring. I'd give them something else to do that was of similar vein. I remember doing my A-level maths homework in the corridor waiting for break to be over. This little kid, he was 5. Shit you not, this kid was 5. And he came in and he went, what are you doing, miss? And I went, I'm doing my homework. What do you mean you're doing your homework? I said, well, I'm still at school. I'm just at a bigger school than you. And he went, oh, okay. What are you doing? And I said, I'm doing maths. And he goes, I like maths. And I said, he said, so what are you doing? And I showed him a thing and I explained, this is an equation and I have to find out the value of X and Y. And he went, so how does that work? And I said, well, if I gave you 5 coins and 1 coin bought an apple, how many coins can you buy? And he goes, well, 5. And I went, you've just solved X. So if Y equals 5X, Y being the number of apples and X being a coin, and you knew you could have 5 of them, you've just told me that Y equals 5. Well, that's clever, he said. And there was a computer program they had where they had to kind of do, find all the numbers that divide by 2. And he was doing it asleep, frankly. And so I was showing him some of my books, and his teacher came on, you can't show him. And I said, why not? And he went, oh, it's far above him. And I said, shame he's understanding it. And by the time he's my age, he'll be bored and won't want to. Yeah. And I'm the same. Sometimes you need to reward yourself. So if that's you have, you go down the cake shop and buy yourself a donut. If it's you eat the world's most unhealthiest kind of you go down McDonald's, whatever. You need to reward yourself because adults, we don't tend to do that. We tend to go, oh, well, I know I did a good job. But some of us need a little bit more than that. And so sometimes you need to go, I did a good job. I deserve to eat a couple of Snickers bars, And I don't get medication for any of my stuff, but one of the things that I've found is that, a bit like you've said, get some snacks and some juice and all the rest of it, is that sometimes I won't, I can almost hear Dr. Now off my £600 life in my head, so I apologise, Dr. Now, but sometimes food can be your reward. If you've done something really hard for you, if you've done something and you really want you want a donut at the end of it, it's one fucking donut. And we're not talking eating the donut shop. We're not talking eating 40 of them. We're talking, one donut. It is not wrong to award yourself that when you've done a good thing. Yeah. It is, so yeah, Fleece and V, I have a lot of sympathy for you. I'm just so used to no one telling me I did good, I automatically assume I didn't. And I find that very hard because it automatically means that even when I've done I fed 5,000 with one peanut, but people are going to say I did a shit job because I only did 5,000 and bought 5,001, because that's how my life's always worked. My managers are like that, or predominantly have been like that. The current one isn't so bad, but then they don't really know what I do either, so... But they've never said it, good job to me, but I haven't really done anything for them to say good job about. I mean, I've done my job, I've kept everything running, everything's quiet, and in fact, the only real feedback they've given me was that because Unix is command-based, that looks really 1980s. Oh, well, cheers, dude. Is that the best you can come up with? Thanks, So, yeah, but the answer of a lot of these things is to find a way to cope with it. And the sooner you know what you're coping with, the sooner you know kind of what things can help and what things can't. Now, as an adult, chances are you already had some ideas, because you've lived with it for a while, after all. And not being 5 or 6, it's not like you can't try a few things and go, no, I don't think that works for me. Try something else. No, actually, that does sort of work. I kind of work with that. Yeah, that could be a good answer. But is there a better answer altogether? Maybe, maybe not. But to have a diagnosis and something that you can, not take the certificate and wave it in someone's face, but to have something that you can say to people. I've been told that this explains best how I am. Now, sometimes it means that work can be made to give you some concessions. And some of those concessions can be really good. My lot were supposed to do some form of thing. They never did. And to see if there was anything they could do to help me. They never did it, so nothing changed. I think the only thing that did change was they stopped expecting me to fanny around with serial numbers and stuff quite so much, and gave it to someone else, who is of course really mad that they've now got to do it. But it is one of those weird things, is that I'm happy for you. I genuinely am, because you can now arm yourself and do research and invest, and look at things, because there may be things you hadn't thought about because you didn't know, and that you can now search, because, as I say, they learn new things about all sorts of stuff all the time. So there's, things to keep an eye out for. You see, that's a good thing, and it's such a simple little concession. It's not like you're going to sit there and play Space Invaders really loud, right? It is a quiet thing. I mean, many of us knit and watch TV and have conversations, so it's not like you're not paying attention. But you've got, the fact that you have a level of autism means that you almost certainly, like me, if your brain isn't busy enough, it kind of stops concentrating on the easy task at hand. You need enough complexity going on, otherwise your brain... It's a bit like a car. You have to have... If you've let the clutch out, you have to have enough revs to keep it going. If you don't, it will stall, and my brain does the same. It kind of, it's almost if you're talking about shit and this is a meeting I really didn't need to be in, or I'm barely participating, or I'm not needed yet but I'll be needed later, my brain is in free fall, and my brain has one habit that is really awkward, which is that if it's bored, it wants to go to sleep. And it's almost like narcolepsy, in that if it's decided it's bored enough, it will go to sleep. and I have a real job to try and keep it awake, because it's going, but this is too boring. I do not want to be here for that. I do not need to endure this tedium. I can switch off and wake up later when it's all over. And you can't do that in company meetings. They don't like it. And I'm not saying that working at home is the answer to that, but it also means, for example, that if I'm struggling, I can play Patience on my phone. So I've given my brain something else to do, and now it's got enough to keep it ticking over. And, I know one guy at work who sits doing a colouring book. If he is more of a backseat person for the meeting, and he is beginning to struggle, he cracks out a colouring book and starts colouring in. He's nearly 60. He's not 12 here. He's a fully grown man with grandkids, for Christ's sake. But it's his way of coping with it. And I think, to an extent, we all need a bit of that. Because unless you are the active speaker... I mean, if I was just watching me doing this, right? And not doing it, and maybe not typing in the box to, interact, I would almost certainly have fallen asleep probably about 2.5 hours ago. Because my brain would go, oh, it's interesting. I'll just watch it, and I'll just lie down and get comfortable. And well, it isn't, and that's the thing, is that irrelevant. I mean, that's why fidget spinners were such a thing, was that it gave people something extra to do to keep their brains ticking over, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if we live in an age where tomorrow morning I can wake up and tell the world that I think I'm a cat, we can't judge people who look at something and go, that is so mind-numbingly dull and boring because, it's repetitive, and I've done it now, I know how to do it, I could do this with my eyes shut, that they might need something else to keep their brain from shutting off entirely and then making stupid mistakes because there isn't enough to keep them involved in what they're doing. It's part of the reason why some people have car accidents. It's not because they fell asleep always, but they lost concentration because their brain was just going, I'm driving in a straight line, I've been driving in a straight line for 5 fucking hours. Brain's gone to, oh, I wonder what's on the telly, I wonder if there are any films on. Oh shit, he braked and I didn't. It's it's yeah, as you say, it's a bit like the stupid question theory. There is no stupid question. The only stupid question is the one not asked. Now, it's not entirely true, but for the most part it is true. If it's a genuine question, If you genuinely don't know the answer, and you generally need to know the answer, it's not a stupid question. If you're just asking it to be annoying, that makes it a stupid question. It is not inherently a stupid question just because it's a question, And I'm not convinced I twisted these enough. Even though they are indeed twisted, I'm going to twist them again because they didn't look twisted enough. Take care, Felice and V. Hopefully see you tomorrow. Welcome to the madness, people. Welcome to the madness. You find me working on triangle 29 of a net curtain, as depicted in the top right hand corner by a large number of squares divided into triangles. This is because, well, I'm making squares, and the squares will be joined together to make a net curtain. It's going to look a little bit ropey when I'm done, but I didn't really know what else to make with my lace, because I enjoy making lace, but I have no need for it. And net curtain was, well, the most I could come up with. Thank you. I'm sure there are mistakes. There are always mistakes. It wouldn't be one of my pieces of lace without the mistakes being in there somewhere. So, the one thing about lace is that it progresses excessively slowly. Unless you've watched the short videos, which I'm sure many of you have, where people seem to pick up a bobbin and go, and it kind of flows out the back. And you're kind of going, bear in mind, I know what they're doing. I can see on the pillow and the pattern what they're doing. And so many times they seem to literally, there's one where this lady seems to pick up a bobbin and she kind of shuffles them around like this underneath, but doesn't actually do anything. And yet lace comes out, and it's kind of like, how are you doing that? No wonder people accused of being witches in years gone by. Because, well, frankly, I'm going to agree with them a little bit. So I am making, as I said, a net curtain. We have done a lot of talk because I kind of had plans for net curtain number 2. Yeah, I'm not even halfway through this one. You bite me. But I have kind of plans for net curtain number 2. To this end, the last couple of weeks, we made some strips. And I have them here. Hang on. Let me pull them apart because they're next to each other. And so I made a strip like this. And I made 2 of them. Look, there's another one. Now, these 2 strips, when side by side, occupy the same square footage as this. Now, thank you. Now, the principle of the strip is, as you might notice, if I put them side to side here, this kind of blurs and disappears. This is the plan. This is what we want. We want the join to blur. The slithery snakes down the side, obviously you can tell where the join will be, but the plan is that we're going to work out how to join them, because, by the way, they don't document there are people who know how it was done. So back in 1600 and something, when it started, the French, when making their Chantilly shawls, had a lady, you'd have many people in a group making lace, making a shawl, and they would make strips. Now, not necessarily rectangular strips, but they would make strips. And one lady, her sole job was to join the strips together in an invisible way. So it's possible. The problem is, there isn't really any documentation on it. Now, there is a lady on YouTube who has basically flexed that she went to a training course in France and learnt how to do it. And on Monday, I rather spectacularly tried to explain some of my ideas of how it must work on stream, and I failed spectacularly. So we will not be doing that again in a hurry, because we were trying to mimic joining them together. But as you can see, like that, they join together quite nicely. If I go and over here, where is it? There it is. I have a tub. There you go. I have a tub. Yes, it is a biscuit box. Bite me. Alright. It's a biscuit box. In which are my accompanied 7 squares. Now I'm going to put this over the top so you can see better, and that it won't tangle with the pins of the thing of the day. Right. So if I take some squares. Here is one square. And here is another square. You will soon see that when I line these next to each other, while the join is, you know, not exactly the Great Wall of China and seen from outer space, there is no way to join those lines without there being a line in the middle, because this mesh, there is a line down the middle. The point with its corresponding friends, so let me move these up a bit and put back my two strips, which are not easy to put down in a way that makes them look like they're joined together, but, you know, we'll go with it and we'll do our best. Right, so we'll put that there. And this kind of next to it and try and scooch them together so that they don't have blatant gaps. Is that it's not as good as it was a minute ago, but it's close, right? Because there's no harsh line, the join is going to be subtler, if nothing else. Now, when you've got a harsh line, joining them's really easy, because you go over so along the line, and they are now joined. How do you do that on an invisible manner? Because this style of lace is known as torchon, and while I've made bumps, not a straight edge at the edge, all that's really happened is where this would have had a straight line, I've made the straight line go round a pin that would have been the pin if there'd been another pair, right? So it gives the bumpy edges. So they're the right size and everything, and they're even, and, you know, all those kind of things. Yes, there were a couple of mistakes, but, yeah, you know, they're even. But if I add a thread to it, well, there's going to be 3 threads when there was 2. And, well, that's going to make it stand out, because no matter what I do, this will make it kind of thicker. Now, there is a technique in lace making called lassen. And what you do in lassen is effectively, not to this extent, please understand, but let me do this with these, because this is easier to do it with, because, well, it just is, like this, is that you overlay them like that, and then sew again round it to join them together. Well, now instead of 2 threads, you'll have 5, because there's 2 from the top layer, 2 from the bottom layer, and 1 to join them together. Well, there's no way that's not going to show. I mean, because there's a bit of an edge to it, not a lot, admittedly, but a bit of an edge to it. If I try and overlap them a bit, now admittedly I'm not going to get it perfectly right, but it's still going to show as a denser bit, because, well, it's twice as thick. Well, and it will have an extra thread, so actually it's 2.5 times. You know, but what I know roughly how they did it. What I don't understand is how they had the patience. But now they didn't do it with this style of lace. Maybe that is why they didn't use this style of lace. They used a slightly different version of lace, which is called, well, we have a version here in the UK called Buck's Point. Chantilly and Buck's Point is basically the same stuff. Now, the difference with the two is that this is a grid where a pair of bobbins travel in this direction and a pair of bobbins travel in this direction. And they do a little bit of a dance where they meet, going undery overy, and make the grid. In Buck's Point, you don't do that. Instead of both bobbins from a pair going that way and both bobbins from a pair going that way, the two in the middle cross, and then the edge ones twist a couple of times. So it's much more fragile. It hasn't got the strength. And it makes it a lot more delicate. But it also means that, for example, if you've got a join, you put a pin in it, and you can send one single bobbin out the loop rather than a pair like I've done here. And then, of course, you can add a second one which will look just like all the others for where they're twisted, and join it that way. So of course that's great. Yeah, I could do Buck's Point. I really could. But Buck's Point is more fragile. I don't feel that a net curtain should be overly fragile. Because, well, to be honest, you would think that dangling in front of a window was an easy life. But if you've ever had net curtains, something always seems to happen to them. They snag on something, you go to open the window and it catches on your watch strap. You go to wash it and it falls apart. Stuff happens to it. So if I'm putting all this effort in, and I need to point out to you here, well, this is why the squares, because much like granny squares in crochet and stuff, joining these securely is a relatively easy task, right? So hence doing some squares, because the squares are a easy to resolve issue. I can join them together, for the lines will mean that there is a join, so the join will show anyway, so if it shows just a hair more, it's not really a big deal, right? But it also meant I didn't have to worry about trying to do it without it being visible. But my brain has been plaguing me with the, I don't want to see them, it kind of whiny child kind of stuff. And I have been plotting as a kind of a sub project, and planning how we can do a net curtain, because, well, the obvious answer is make it in one piece. Let me explain something. At the moment, I don't even have half the bobbins on my pillow. To make the squares is just under 100 bobbins. To make the strips that you just saw, which are, oddly enough, exactly the same size as the squares, because the widest point here is the same as the width of the strips, requires exactly the same number of bobbins. So if you then consider that basically a 3-inch strip of lace needs around 100 bobbins, making a net curtain suddenly needs a somewhat excessive number of bobbins. Now, I happen to like the idea of my net curtains being flat and not wavy like most curtains are, right? So I do not need to make the compulsory 2 to 3 times the actual width of your window in net curtain, for I want it to lay flat because I want to appreciate the bloody pattern that I'll have put on it. So to that point, I only have to make something as wide as the window. And with these squares, I have chosen to do it to the size of the actual pane, not the frame. Because the idea will be I'll stick one of those like stick-on bars and it will hang off that, right? Now, in terms of strips, if I changed the squares to strips at the size that I have been making them, I can make the strips as long as I like, because you just keep coming. It's really easy. So it reduces the number of joins that there are. This is a good thing. Having downward stripes in a net curtain can work as a pattern if you do it in a manner that doesn't look like a mistake, because obviously that can be an issue. If it looks more like you screwed it up in lines down it, it looks like a fault line, and that's not really the aim of the game. But if I use 100 for this, and I need what would be 6 strips, well, that's 600 bobbins now. Now, I struggle to keep all my bobbins from being tangled. I'm at one of the widest sections. It's not the widest section, but one of the actual widest section is when I do this square here, and I've got all the bobbins in tow for that. It's a little bit wider, but not a lot. this number of bobbins that I've got in play here, because these are all in sticks, is kind of my maximum comfort zone. Well, if I've now got 600 bobbins, now, yeah, I can put them in sticks. That's a lot of sticks. I do have a lot of sticks, not enough sticks though. So these particular bobbins, I get 6 pairs of bobbins in a stick. So if I have 600 bobbins, I'm going to need 50 sticks. Now I actually think I might have 50 sticks. I think I bought 2 lots of 25, so I might have. But that's a lot of stick. That's a lot of bobbins in sticks. Now, obviously, it depends on the pattern that I pick, because obviously, if I pick bits so that there's only ever small bits that I can retrain, it is a lot. Now, I have enough bobbins to do it. I'm not going to pretend that I don't. Not maybe in this particular shape of bobbin, but I have some other bobbin shapes, and I have one where I've bought the best part of 750 bobbins because I really, really like them. They look like these. Now, these are great because these bobbins are really quite light, and it's the one thing I don't like about them is how light they are. This bobbin, despite being made of wood, is heavy. This bobbin weighs, I'd say 2 of these bobbins weigh as much as these and the stick, right? So they really are quite weighty, which is quite nice because it means they don't roll around and mess you about and tangle quite so much. But in being straight, they don't sit in the sticks very well. Murphy's Law, right? So I have enough because I've got like 700 of those little bobbins. I could do that, but it is now, admittedly, with the straight ones, I can get 7 pairs of bobbins in a stick. So 14 bobbins in a stick. It's, but that's still a lot of bobbins. I could make it in much fatter thread and therefore have, if I made it in thread that was humongously huge, I could make it so that 100 bobbins made something as wide as my square. Could do that. But then it wouldn't be very net curtainy now, would it? It would look a little bit more shawl. And so I find myself in lots of conundrums. Now, I am not good at making decisions because the moment I think I've made a decision, my brain goes, but actually, did you know that? Because it's like there's 2 people in there sometimes fighting, which is why the net curtains are a thing. And there is this bit of you that goes, but did you know that maybe if you did this, thanks brain, didn't need that. And so I need to make quite a few of those strips to try slightly different joining techniques to try and work out which one is the most invisible. For I do think that whatever I do, it is likely to show. Unless I do a different type of lace. At which point, that can be a thing. Now, Buck's Point, or Chantilly style lace, is not normally done on a 45-degree grid. Which adds extra complexities to it, because then you actually end up with denser lace or more bobbins. So again, there is this little bit of you going, okay, and so maybe I end up doing Buck's Point, but I am really concerned that will end up, too flimsy, because I want it to have a bit of strength so that it can stay on my window and withstand a bit of a wash. Now, the wash may not be, hard graft, we're not talking of pounding it with stones or anything, right? We are talking putting it in some warm soapy water and swishing it about a bit. But I still occasionally will need to wash it. And I don't want it to be flimsy because, generally Buck's Point is made with the tiniest of thread. And, it's more like working with human hair kind of thread. And so it wouldn't have any strength. And I just, given the size of it, I mean, the 7 squares that I've done, I started in September. Now, I have gone off on a couple of detours, but not that much of a detour. It generally takes 3 to 4 weeks to do a square, which is a long time. Now, the strips did go a lot faster, which is really weird. But the strips did go a lot faster. The 2 strips that I made that cover the same space as this square only took 2 weeks. I can't explain that one particularly. We did talk about it a bit earlier in that when you put bobbins in this pattern, you put 1 bobbin pair effectively for every pin down the side, or down this straight. When you do the starting of the strip, because you're starting up here, every pinhole is 2 pairs, and you put 2 pairs in and work 1. Put 2 pairs in and work 1. So the adding of bobbin goes a lot quicker, and I guess in feeling like you're making a lot more progress, you are spurred on to do more. With this, adding of, a single bobbin and incorporating it and doing a whole row and adding a bobbin, it just feels like it takes that much longer. It doesn't. It's, arguably it's the same amount of effort, but somehow it feels a lot longer. And, I can't truly explain why doing a strip takes that much less time, but it's available on my YouTube and you can see exactly how it works. That covering the same amount of space really didn't take me anything like as much as doing one of these squares. Now, there is a little caveat to that, which is I was on holiday for the last week. Well, for last week I was off work. I had paid time off. But it's not like I spent 8 hours a day doing it. I'm talking in terms of hours. It took a lot less than doing a square. So, by converting to strips, at the rate it was going, and assuming that the join, excluding the joining, because bear in mind, of course, we haven't included joining in this so far either, so, it's not like that's part of the equation. I reckoned that this is basically going to take me 18 months, because, well, I'm only 7 squares in best part of 7 months. If I can do a square in 2 weeks, well, that halves the lace making time. And there will only be the joins between the strips. I don't have to join 2 sides of a square. So in theory, there is less sewing at the end of it. So it should be quicker. So hence, there is a bit of me that's kind of contemplating at the end of square number 9, when I've got half a curtain, to make it a half a curtain, and then to start in strips. Which means I need to have made some decisions. So, I do need to do more strips, to do more join options. I need to document what the join options are and mark them somehow so that I don't lose track, so that when I'm done and I, kind of blue tack them to a window or whatever, sellotape them to a window to have a look and see, which one stands out. Because obviously if you're sitting, 3 inches from it, you'll probably see the join. I'm not going to pretend that that's not a thing. What I don't want to do is a bit like the square joins, because you will be able to see them from the other side of the house. I don't really want the strip version to have the same manner. So if I can find a way that a couple of paces away, the further away, the closer I can get to it and not tell where the join is, the more successful, right? But this means I've got to sew them together. I've got to come up with methods. I've got to make the strips to do it. I need a research posse. That's what I need. I need a research posse that will sit there and, 5 people will each make a strip and then, will join them in pairs and or even better, 10 people, 5 different joins, and then maybe join some of those joins together, and we'll all sit down at the end and go, well, I like that one, don't like that one so much, no, that one's out, and sit there and boil it down to the most successful join in a kind of scientifically style manner. But as I don't have a posse of fellow lace makers who are willing to join, who either to join or willingly even to partake of this, I haven't asked any, I will also admit, but, I can't imagine too many are going to be overly keen on making some strips and joining a couple of strips together just to find out which of us can do the better join, because, of course, it's all well and good that maybe you can do the join. What if I can't? And it's my curtain, so kind of need to be able to do it myself. But I have much to go. So for those of you who have joined, I am here most days. You did unfortunately find me coming in as I was thinking of finishing, because it is 20 to 11 here. It is a complicated thing, and I have plans, but the problem is a bit like a small child. My eyeballs are bigger than my stomach. In that, fair enough. I think the biggest problem is if making the strips and the squares took a Saturday or even a week, you could it wouldn't be so daunting. But when it's 2 weeks of reasonable hard graft to make 2 test strips and 1 join. Now, obviously, I can make another test strip and do another join, but I must very carefully mark which join is which on those kind of occasions. It's not a quick thing to check. It's not like doing a swatch to see if you've got tension on knitting. Which can be slow enough, let's truly be honest. If you've ever had to do kind of a jumper swatch in sock yarn, you'll know what I mean. So, if it was quick to do, if you could do a couple of strips on a Saturday or over a weekend, and maybe sew it up on a Monday night and go, no, not that one, next, it wouldn't be so bad. But when you could be looking at 6 months of making strips to do various tests, no. I mean, I'm 52. I want to do it before I'm dead, right? I don't still want to be doing experiments to find out which are the right strips or which are the right joins, or I want to see it done, And so I do find myself slightly perplexed by the fact that my brain keeps coming up with but you could also, will you shut up, brain? I don't need more ideas. I've got enough ideas in my head that I can't get down and done without you adding to them. So I do need to make more strips. I need to join the strips that I've got. But I also need to decide, because when I made strip number 2, the original plan and the biggest hope that I had was that when you're doing lace, there is a very normal lace joining technique, which is that when you get to the pinhole, such as you do at the end, when you come round to this side, you pull the pin out, you poke a thing through it, you pull a loop up of the incoming bobbin, and then you poke the other bobbin of the pair down through it, and you effectively make a half hitch round the existing hole. And I was really pleased that, I was really expecting that to be the answer, because, well, it really, it's how every lace join is made. You look at any lace, whether it's got mesh, it's whether it's Bedfordshire with its little plaits or anything of the sort, all of the joins in those, so if they do a square or they do a wiggly, swirly thing, and they then, go and hook it up so that it's stable by linking, if I was making this kind of inner chunk and then doing an edge to it, I might then make kind of almost tendrils out to the edge and hook round the chunks, right? And this is how it's done all the time. And so it is quite small and it really doesn't show. And except what it did was that because these bobbins were coming from this side, you'd have not just the loop going around. Let me do it with a stick, actually, because it's a bit easier to demonstrate with a stick. Because these have got loops on already. Because you had the loop coming round the bobbin, you then had this coming round again, and now something going through it. So you had 4 strands of thread going over the edge of the little bobble down the side. And what, of course, 4 strands of thread do in a row is make a straight line. So it kind of made it look a lot like this, only shitter, frankly. Because instead of being a solid straight line, it was like a dashed straight line that just looked untidy. So that didn't last very long. I think we got about this far into it and went, no, not working, giving up on that. And I just made a second strip. And on Monday, in trying to work out some of it, I put pins in with a bit of string to mimic the edges, and then we tried to use another bit of string to join them together, and some were bulkier than others. And some looked better than others, some looked really quite awful, some didn't look like they'd hold at all. And one of the problems, of course, is that lace making is not about knots. Now, my dear friend Naughty Cult is a very good knot guru, but the boffins of lace making would poo-poo there being knots. Well, but by not having knots, if all you've got is effectively a bit of a zigzag, well, one piece could slide up and down. It's not going to hold it in place. And don't really want that. I kind of want it to be solid. So I haven't joined anything together because A, tiny. B, I mean, obviously this is a short thing because obviously my net curtain will be about 1 metre long, not, like 5.5 inches or whatever this is. But even so, even getting tension and everything right over, these 2 pieces could be quite difficult. So I haven't started that yet. But I do know that my time needs to come. But I also need to decide what I'm doing. Now, part of me thinks a small overhand knot where the bit's actually, because, if you zigzag up it so it's not a straight line, so you kind of windy, rather than 2 threads going round, crossing over, 2 threads going round, a bit more like a shoelace. If you just do a zigzag up it, it might not show as much, but it also won't be very strong. And there's been nothing really holding it in place, and I just see issues. But if I could make it in one piece, well, that'd be great. But as we've already established, that's 600 bobbins, and I'm not sure I'm mentally strong enough for that. Well, I think the problem is because I won't say the technique's lost. I will say that the technique is dying out because, there's as I mentioned, there's a lady on YouTube who did this gross flex about how she got a grant and how she went to go and do this training course with some woman in France. And basically it sounds a lot like I went up a Tibetan mountain and studied with the Buddhist monks for 15 years before they'd give me the thing, right? That's how it kind of comes over. And obviously she's been paid to go and do it. Now, there isn't enough information in the video for me to investigate whether there are lessons still being given at this place, and whether I can pay and how much I might need to pay, because I haven't got a passport either. But, I can't necessarily go to sort that out and learn it myself directly. But she also doesn't show anything she's done with the technique. There isn't, YouTube videos of her using the technique. And so there's literally nothing. So all she's kind of gone is, oh, well, I know how to do that. Okay, have you? Right, okay. There is kind of no proof that goes with it. So it just comes over as a bit of a flex. And that's actually quite annoying, because knowing that she learnt it and isn't sharing it Makes her a bit annoying. Anyway, I'm going to quit for today. I will be back tomorrow being Thursday by my reckoning, because I lose track of which day of the week it is as I work from home. I will be back tomorrow, probably around sometime 5-6 p.m. my time, which is about 6 hours. 5 p.m. is nearly 6 hours ago my time. So somewhere in that range, i.e. after work, obviously, because can't do it while I'm working. If it's a good day, it'll be 5 o'clock. If it's a bad day, it'll be nearer 7, because I'll have wanted some food and a sulk first. But we will be back tomorrow. I hope some of you will join me. You are always welcome. As I said, I should be back tomorrow. And we will continue down the Triangle of Doom. I will put some of these in sticks, actually, before I finish. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they don't behave even these don't behave that well in the sticks. Sometimes they're a bit naughty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you need to be poked into here because you've only got 5. There you go. There, you're all in sticks, all nice and safe for the moment. I will now take a photo as my customary, because that way it will be tomorrow's picture. So yes, I do apologise to those of you who came in towards the end. You didn't really get to see me do a lot. Sorry. But hopefully you will come back for tomorrow, or another day, because, well, I've got plenty to do, so, and I am currently making triangles, so I've got, well, clearly, you know, I've basically got 8 triangles that I've got to make to at least get to half a curtain, so I'm going to be doing it for a while, because bear in mind, this is 2 nights worth of work, okay? It's really quite depressing when you think about it sometimes. So I will be here. I do a stream earlier afternoon my time on a Friday, so I stream from 2 o'clock onwards until I'm too hungry. This is because where I work I get to finish at 12 o'clock and my weekend started here, you know, kind of deal. So I tend to do an early one for those who can attend an earlier one. And then often on Saturdays I do a much later one, so I wouldn't start till around about now, so that other people can come to a later one. Although I do, as I understand it, there is a playtest happening for what was Evercraft now, or Elordian, or whatever it's called. So I may be kind of a bit stuck in there. I've got a Discord which will tell you when I go live if Twitch is being its usual annoying, not very cooperative self. And I do have some socials, exclamation mark socials, to see those. And you can follow me on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, because I post the pictures and links to the videos. But I am primarily, hang on, I don't suppose you're going to let me now, are you? No, I can't. Oh well. Forgot what I was going to say anyway. Isn't that always the way?